Just by looking at the audience today, we know why we have so many issues hiring DevSecOps. No wonder. I don't know, should I move, stay? My mother used to say that if you're not sure, you need to ask, what would Manny Barzilai do in such a situation? I'll probably move and do like this with the hands. All right, so our next panel will be about DevSecOps. And for that, we have gathered a group of distinguished techno-anthropologists from all over the globe. And I want to introduce them. First, let's hear it for Vered Flis. So Vered was the first to ever catch a live Azure-type DevSecOps Erectus after chasing him for 5 blocks in Circle CI. And thank you very much for joining us. Next, Aviad Diamant. Aviad spent 2 years in the Amazon, in the Grafana Reserve, living and learning the habits of DevSecOps, of a local DevSecOps tribe. Third, Mr. Moshe Belostotsky from Fiverr. Yeah, that's right. Moshe was the first researcher who actually managed to breed a puppet DevSecOps in his container, but it was swallowed by Python. All right, let's start. Let's start by introducing yourselves properly this time, and then we can move on. Vered, go ahead.
So, can you hear me? Hi. So my name is Vered. I was in the past 10 years, I was a developer and R&D manager. And today, I am a technical account manager at DoiT International. Right now, I'm like 100% of my time learning and helping customers, our big companies in the Israeli industry with their journey to the cloud, to the clouds, basically. So this is me.
Nice to have you.
Hi, I'm Moshe. I'm managing the DevOps at Fiverr. I'm with Fiverr for the last 5 years. I started my journey at the age of 16 in the industry at NDS, what's now Synamedia. That's me.
I'm Aviad Diamant, working as head of DevOps and infrastructure in BriefCam. 15 years in the industry, and for the last 2 years also volunteer in SpaceIL.
Cool, thank you very much. I'm glad to having you guys. I'll start with a very generic...
Guys.
Guys, sorry.
And girls.
Ladies and gentlemen. I'll start with a very basic, but I think the most important question of them all. What is DevSecOps? What does it mean? Moshe.
So, I believe that DevSecOps is a DevOps engineer focused on security. You should know the DevOps world, CI/CD, configuration as a code, deployment procedures, and being able to give the security aspect in all of those systems.
So, I see things a little bit different than Moshe. I think that DevSecOps is more around security engineers that have the perspective of DevOps and want to automate security activities and insert them as part of the day-to-day routine.
Basically, I agree with both of you. I think it depends on the company and the company needs. But I think that the most important is to understand why we have this practice, the DevSecOps, because everyone are familiar with the DevOps. Right now there is DevSecOps, so why? I think that the need is coming from the agile natures of the companies, the tech companies that we are seeing here in Israel. All of us are now familiar with all the unicorns, the new unicorns in Israel, and they are moving fast. And in order to stay competitive, they can't have delays, in their pipelines. So they did it. All of us did it with DevOps, right? We applied automations in all the steps. from deployments to operations. We are deploying continuously, CI, CD. A lot of people are talking about liquid software, like streaming changes to production. And they cannot take security as the last step, like we did in traditional software development. So security should come, taking security left to the development, think about security first as part of the development cycle in order to stay competitive, move fast, and not let any group hold the innovation of the company. So I think the DevSecOps basically should apply the security practice in the organization and make sure that all the groups are aligned with security, think about security, so they don't get like breaches in production.
That's amazing. So
it will be too late,
So we see a variety of opinions about and objectives about what should it be a DevSecOps. What do you think, Moshe, should be the background of a DevSecOps engineer? Like IT, or should they come from development, from DevOps?
Well, I'll start a little bit about DevOps, as DevSecOps is a DevOps engineer focused on DevOps. DevOps engineers have many different backgrounds. They have network, they have IT, security, developers, and many other backgrounds that we have. I think that the most important thing is the soft skills. Being a problem solver, agile, adopt software, and all these other things that are important as a person. On the professional skills, yes, need affinity to security, so preferably a security engineer that became a DevOps, but also knowledge on CI/CD and configuration as a code, on all the DevOps things, and it depends on the company. So some knowledge in technologies that the company is using, if a company using cloud, databases or Kubernetes, all those in the previous background is also very important for DevSecOps engineers. So there is not one way for that.
That's cool. Vered, what is your take on this?
I hear Moshe, and it seems like we are looking for superheroes, right? With DevOps, developers, everything. It's very hard. I heard that you already talked here about recruiting, right? And
just hoping.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
Yes. But I think that, of course, it will be the preferable candidate, right, with all of the checklists that Moshe mentioned. And I will add that, of course, with all the cloud technology that we are all using, all the companies, right, are using cloud technology in some way or another. So I believe that DevSecOps must know or be familiar with cloud technology, the security challenges in cloud security, how to approach the security in cloud. There are, the zero trust practice, which is very, very important. There is the responsibility model, right? The shared responsibility models that the cloud vendors are announcing all the time. It's not only my responsibility, it's your workload. I can protect and I can own the security of the infrastructure, but if you mess up, it's your responsibility. So DevSecOps also must be aware of those new environments. It's not so new anymore, but those new or cloud environments challenges in security.
That's amazing. I want to put the emphasis on a very specific aspect of what you just mentioned. And Aviad, I want to ask you, do you think DevSecOps should be hands-on or project management in nature?
I think the answer is probably a bit of both. DevSecOps engineers should have the ability to design security processes as part of the whole security architecture and framework, and at the same time should have the ability to implement steps within this process that they design and automate them and make them efficient as part of the CI/CD or a daily routine. So a combination of both types.
Do you think they need to touch, to change production environment? I'm just asking out of the blue.
Sorry?
Do you think they need to touch to change production environment like DevOps do usually?
I think they can, and obviously, again, as part of a CI process or CI/CD process where they run all the changes that they do and all the automations that they do on dev and stage environments, and then they can be done on production as well, yes.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. And next question is about the organization location of the DevSecOps. That's, again, it's an open issue. We know that. They oftentimes report to DevOps. They oftentimes report to the security team. Where do you think they need to be located, Moshe? Who should they report to?
Actually, it's a great question. Because we also discussed it like a couple of weeks ago. The question is actually where he'll put his bug in the morning. And in my opinion, as head of DevOps, that you should be part and reporting to the security office, actually. The security office and the security team or the security groups are the domain experts on security. They learn security, they live security, they know the standards, they have a cross-group project. In addition to that, in some ways, there might be conflict of interest between a DevSecOps engineer and the DevOps group. And because of those two reasons, I think it should be in the security office.
Okay, thanks. Another one for you, Moshe. Assuming we've done the impossible and hired a DevSecOps engineer, what do you expect them to produce? What should be their deliverables in the end of the first month? What should they do?
I think by the end of the first month, the DevSecOps engineer should know the architecture, understand it, know the people who is working with, a little bit about the focus on the company. During this process, he will see some gaps. And he at least will have some idea of where to start, what to map first, and what to research first.
Aviad, what's your take about it?
So in one of the places I used to work with a few years ago, after a couple of months from beginning to work there, we found a password that is committed to one of our Git repositories, God forbid. After the first shock, and after fixing this little problem, we've decided to run a scan on all of our Git repositories to see if there are any other secrets that are hidden or not really hidden. We found quite a few. So after this scan and after these fixes, we implemented an automatic scan that runs as part of the CI/CD and alerts for passwords or secrets that are exposed in our repositories. I think that a DevSecOps engineer, even in the first month of deployment, can come and set the bar in regards to standard actions, that's standard security actions that can be done, and they're not really related to a specific organization or a specific structure. So they can clean out all the problems, the simple and basic and industry common problems, security problems that we have, and then they can proceed to more specific security activities.
Okay, so just a small secret. The entire panel is not, we don't have any specific DevSecOps on the team, as you can see. All of the participants, the panelists, are DevOps in nature. And there go the next question. I'm staying with you, Aviad. Assuming we don't have a DevSecOps, a dedicated person that carry out this task, what do you think should be the skills of DevOps to carry out DevSecOps tasks properly?
So DevOps, as we said by nature, are more focused on automating processes and providing solid infrastructure solutions. When they need to take care of security activities, they need to first understand what security means, and more importantly, what security doesn't mean, and where they can touch and change stuff, and where they can't. After this stage, they can start performing security activities given or guided by the head of security of the organization, and only then they can get to a position where they can automate these activities and run them as part of the daily routine.
Well, what if developers would step in and started to take more DevSecOps tasks? That's a possibility?
Well, no, not developers. Developers are not for security. Usually when there's no DevOps and there's a DevSecOps gap, it means that there is no automatic execution of security activities which can be automated. It means that the responsibility for security is spread across the whole organization and more people. There's no faceless automatic tool that runs these activities in the background, so people need to be first aware of this, and the security awareness must be raised across the whole organization. And basically it means that people should care more about security and in general in everything that we do.
Vered, we've mentioned it, I think, more than once, that we have huge challenges in hiring DevSecOps. The hiring cycles are very long. What can be done in order to bridge the gap, in your perspective?
Yes, I think that the whole industry is feeling this shortage of senior or experienced people, and they're recruiting, trying to recruit, not only DevSecOps, by the way, also DevOps and developers, and qualified and experienced people. It's very, very difficult. I think that it's kind of, a crisis for me, because I'm speaking with a lot of my customers, huge companies here in Israel, and even also small startups, and they're telling me that it's a real problem, and they have a lot of plans, and the roadmap is, full of tasks, and they got a lot of, cool features that they want to add in, but there are not enough people, and I think that this is it's risky. It's risky for the innovations nature of Israel. I hear a lot of startups complaining that they cannot innovate, they cannot develop, they cannot keep with the pace that they need to. So what I suggest, I think that as leaders, as people that as managers in the Israeli high tech, we should bring or recruit people which are juniors. For God's sake, right? With no experience. I think it's a combination of senior team with juniors can do great things to the whole industry, because we are in a serious shortage of experienced people. And I also heard that Moshe, he can also tell a little bit about his story, that he recruit 2 juniors, DevOps, to his teams, and they're doing a great job. And they didn't, they didn't disappoint him. This is, I think, the solution. Just let more people opportunities to be part of this amazing ecosystem.
Amazing. Aviad, so you're my go-to guy for very odd questions. And the next one is about maybe given the shortage on skilled personnel. Does it make sense maybe to outsource DevSecOps outside of the organization? I mean, in the end, they have the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, they do. And I think probably not. DevOps and DevSecOps are, in my eyes, and security engineers are, in my eyes, the core of the R&D organization. They require access to all the secrets, and at the same time, they need to have an understanding, a deep understanding, and also oversee the whole process of development, from committing code to Git all the way till it gets to production. Gaining such control and understanding of the whole process and giving, obviously, access to the secrets to an outsource seems to me close to impossible. My suggestion is to do it in-house.
Moshe, do you think that when you think about the DevSecOps, and you've mentioned that your team did a lot of practical security tasks as part of your ongoing operations, what do you think are the main challenges for DevSecOps engineers?
I think that the main challenge is to clear the noise. There are many gaps and abundance of tools. So to clear the noise, to focus on something, to understand what is important and what is just not by the book. What we should attack first because it will bring value, or not attacking it will bring imminent damage to the system. And that's the main challenge.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'll just add another angle of DevSecOps daily tasks, and then that's their goals. And I think DevSecOps goals changes over time and changes according to the company, its size, its maturity, and we usually focus on visibility during the first year. The following year is usually focused more on automation, and we see that by applying more and more tools to automate processes and mitigate. And the third year is more about being proactive, and being proactive. DevSecOps, it's like the highest of all mountains. You can actually start updating your LinkedIn resume afterwards and searching your next endeavor. And I wanted to ask you, Ver, do you see it the same way? What are the main goals of DevSecOps, in your opinion?
I think that I already mentioned some of the main goal of DevSecOps. DevSecOps should make, the security run in the same pace of development and operations. If it will succeed in this, to make security part of the development, the nature of the DNA and the nature of the company, it succeed, I think.
Okay, so just to summarize, unless we have any questions from the crowd or from the audience or whoever, yes, we have. Okay.
First question. In the last couple of years, we actually from the beginning of time, basically, we've been building our security on the fact that production and developers don't access the production. There is like Chinese walls between them, and the first thing that every auditor is doing is making sure that developers will not have access to the production. And this is like a foundation in ISO and every other security standard there is. How do you...
Except for reality.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you cope with this? I mean, I'm sure you have ISO standards and SOC 2 standards and everything in your organization, and still we're talking about DevOps, which are people that are partly developers and still accessing the production. How do you handle this?
It really depends. Maybe you guys want to take it because it requires, every company has their own policies and it varies, I think, across companies. Moshe, do you want to answer on our behalf?
Yeah, that's a good question, because one of the projects we did is to transform Fiverr into more secure. When I joined Fiverr, every developer and DevOps engineer had root access to any server, could query any database in production, which have its security aspects, but have also performance aspects. And we had some bad queries running in production also from terminal. what we were trying to do when closing the production is to allow developers to work, to develop visibility, observability, automation on top of things that they need. In Fiverr, at least, DevOps engineers are production engineers. So by nature, they should have access to production, to anything in production, basically, because they build it, they maintain it.
I must add that when I first joined Fiverr, one of the first, Moshe was my buddy. A buddy is someone who actually mentor you and help you learn the ropes. And he told me at one point that, Shahar, I was the bad guy until now. You should be the bad guy. I had enough telling the developers that they can't have access to prod. This is your job. You need to tell them, tell it to them. And I think that when I first heard about it, considering the previous company I used to work for, that was amazing. For security, it's like heaven. Not to have access by developers to production, it's amazing. So it can happen. You wanted to add more?
No, I think that the DevSecOps, should have access to a production, and they should be like enablement. They should be enablers and provide the environments that the developers and other groups needs in order to develop like a secure and resilient software. Of course, developers shouldn't go into production, but if there is no environment that or playground or sandbox that they can test or check or deploy check their features, it's problematic. So I think that it's more of like the infrastructure of the company that should change. It's not only DevSecOps, yes or no, it's like the whole company. It's a strategy of the company.
I think it's more in a concept of trust and review. As long as you build trust with the people and the whole nature of the company, that you don't touch production without testing it before and without making sure that someone reviews your changes before you apply them, as long as you build that procedures, I think access to production, obviously, with all the restrictions that needs to be done, is okay.
Perfect. So thank you, guys. We are spot on the second. So we want to thank you all. And you're not leaving?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much, all. And the stage is yours, Manny.